Well, good morning, everyone. This city is Rochester, Minnesota. The date is October 12th. The format is modern. The weather is cold. And I'm Andrew Farnham.
And I'm Stacy Winchell.
And we're bringing you, hopefully, a day's worth of broadcast information and coverage and commentary for a modern $1,000 tournament here in Rochester, Minnesota.
So, for those who may not know where Rochester, Minnesota is, one, it's in Minnesota. It got cold here, and it's just south of the Twin Cities, about an hour. I know from kind of looking at the room as we were setting up here, we have many local players from the Twin Cities area, and I think that we should see some known players on camera. I know a few people who've come down from the cities, and we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, I think that this is the first annual. I don't know if it's going to be annual or not.
First regular, we'll go with regular. How about that?
Regular works for me. First regular 1K event or high-level event that we are hoping to put on here in Rochester. So I came with the plan to chew bubblegum and talk about Modern today, and we're not making an ASMR stream, so I'm not going to chew bubblegum.
Well, I also don't recommend chewing bubblegum because it's really hard to commentate while you're chewing bubblegum. So I can't recommend that.
Sure.
Cannot recommend.
Do we know who our competitors are on this table?
We do not. I chose a table randomly because this is round one, and so we chose something randomly. And deck list should be coming for us shortly here.
Outstanding. So a little bit, not really a little bit about myself. People who know me here, I happen to really like Modern more than any other format. I play a lot of Modern. It seems to be a little bit of a controversial take these days, but Modern has its challenges, but those are the quirks of the format I happen to really like. Overall, Modern is a format that consequently changes really rapidly, but also has a tendency to stay the same or reward, at least the story is, rewards players for really, really, really knowing their deck, because the format has a reputation for being hyperlinear, right?
That would be true. Each format tends to have its own kind of positives and negatives. So you will, any format. My personal favorite format is Legacy. Legacy is, of course, fraught with its own positives and negatives, but Modern right now, with the fresh bannings, it's in a nice place. There seems to be some better deck diversity, and realistically, it's a lot of people who've been playing for a long time have a lot of these cards, and those that don't have a little bit better access to them. So it's a format, maybe it's not the cheapest to break into, it's not a standard, but it's a format that you can break into pretty easily.
Excellent. So it looks like we're almost ready to get set up here with the start of our first round. Player one, who we don't have any names, we'll get those up very shortly. Oh, look at that, right on time.
And then someone dropped off a cake stand for you.
Okay.
All right. All right, so we will have some names up here shortly. So, anything fun that you're hoping to see today?
I personally am hoping to see, again, Modern being a hyperlinear format, I'm hoping to see something on the order of some Amulet Titan today, if you were to ask me. I think that Amulet Titan has gone through some serious changes with the printing of Thrones of Eldraine, or Throne of Eldraine. I think that we will probably see a lot of Tran today. A lot of the staples of the format haven't been pushed out yet. Humans is a deck that took some serious hits over the last calendar year, if you were to ask me. Still a great choice for the format. Still a really powerful aggro but interruptive and disruptive deck, but doesn't quite have the legs in the format. So it looks like we've got Chester on Storm, and our other
Does it have a deck that you control? Okay.
So we've got Kenwon, who is on a blue-white control list, and Chester, who is on Storm. So Chester, he is one of our locals here in Rochester. He's been playing Magic for a few years now, and Storm is honestly, it's another good choice for the format. It's one of my perspectives on Modern is Modern is definitely a format that rewards you for playing what you know. So if you're playing what you know, you will typically at least post a positive record in any tournament you're going to play in.
Yeah. Now it looks like Chester lost the die roll, so blue-white control went first.
Just got the colonnade down.
Game ones with the Storm matchup right now tend to be favored against Storm, but I don't know that that's true in the format overall anymore, and especially in the blue-white control matchup.
I think it kind of depends on like how much. Sorry, we had our door open and we are right next to where the players are playing, so that's why our pause there. Now with the door shut. So it kind of depends on how much counter magic they're going to have in their main deck and how much disruptive pieces.
Yes. In this case, it looks like Kenwon is playing a full 3 Cryptic Command, 3 Force of Negation here, along with a Spell Snare suite that looks to be 2 of. And I like this from Kenwon here. I think that this is going to be an interesting little. Looking at the list, it's going to be a very interesting pivot point. He's playing a single main deck Shadow of Doubt.
And that main deck Shadow of Doubt, I mean, if he draws it, can be backbreaking. Just negating your opponent's gifts ungiven is huge. So there's Teferi.
Now, Teferi's interesting, too, in Modern and in the Storm matchup. There are a lot of cards that have been printed on power level or unbanned recently on power level that have kind of pushed out or bullied out just by virtue of them being automatic includes in certain deck lists, like Teferi Time Raveler, that have made certain matchups, certain decks much more favorable for the blue-white control lists and the blue-white Stoneforge list over the last, say, 6 months or so. How does the Teferi, in your estimation, Stacy, how do you think the Teferi lines up here?
The Teferi, what it really does here is it forces the Storm player to have to gifts on their turn. A lot of the times the setup turn is passing into your opponent, doing the gifts on the end step so that you can set up your Storm turn right afterwards. And Teferi kind of forcing you to have to tap out on your own turn. If this... In the blue-white, maybe not quite as good as if you were, say, on like an Esper where you have some discard spells to work with. Ooh, is that Noxious Revival?
That was a Noxious Revival during his main phase, putting the Baral Chief of Compliance back on top of his library here.
Okay, and then the follow-up Serum Vision, all of this makes sense. Get the Baral, scry 2, play Baral, kind of negate that Spell Snare from earlier since his blue-white doing things while your blue-white opponent is tapped out. It's a way he can buy himself back into this game.
We'll want to keep an eye on the interactions with the Teferi because that passive oftentimes gets forgotten or it gets overlooked. It's the most important text. I don't like this sequence here necessarily, laying the Baral. It does force the Teferi, but the Teferi was just going to tick up anyway.
Yeah.
So now he'll be able to bounce and draw a card, bounce the Baral and draw a card.
Yeah, which we see right there.
It doesn't feel like a good use of your resources necessarily. I understand what you're trying to force the blue-white player to do here maybe, but now he'll play a land if he's got it.
I mean, he in a pinch, he probably would have just upped his Teferi had the Baral not been played. However, if our blue-white player wanted the card draw that much, ooh, that was a missed land drop.
That is a missed land drop from Kenwon.
That is rough. Control decks win and lose on those land drops.
He does look like he's got an Opt, another Spell Snare, and a Path to Exile them to continue to keep the Baral off the board.
I mean, he's at least got interaction that he can cast, so that's helpful. And then the colorless source, the Field of Ruin. I mean, you have to play the Field of Ruin in that deck. It's how you deal with other strategies, not necessarily the land you want here.
Our Storm player has Ritual, Gifts Ungiven, Baral, and another Opt. Well, his first Opt. I'll be curious to see if he Spell Snares it or just Paths it from here. Oh, that's not a Path to Exile. That's a Condemn, isn't it?
Yeah. And Brawl, if Brawl sent sideways, that would be a huge misplay. So there's the opt. And didn't even look at it, knew what it was. And, well, he found his land. Unfortunately, not the card he wanted right there. But there's the Spell Snare.
There's
Okay.
the spell snare to keep the brawl off. I wonder if this turn was better served. I don't know if you know or not, but it might have been better served accelerating your mana out and trying to force the gifts through there.
I think, I mean, not knowing exactly what counter suite your opponent is on, because it can vary. He hasn't been able to look at his opponent's hand at all, so not knowing how many Force of Negations he may or may not be playing. Running your gifts out there can be dangerous based on that.
Okay. He passes with mana up.
Yep.
And now he's got the cryptic control mana, the cryptic command mana he needs.
Yep. Ooh, second copy of Brawl.
He draws the brawl.
I expect cryptic command on this.
Now from here we just counter and draw, right?
Yep, you just counter and draw.
Okay.
There's nothing else relevant unless you want to unless you suspect your Storm player to have excess lands, because you can kind of dig out that way as a Storm player. You can just hit your land drops occasionally, but no, I think you just counter and draw here. I believe that's our first fetch land, isn't it? All right, so indeed was counter and draw. And Chester looks like he's debating his follow-up play here.
What do we think he might want to do with it?
Well, he's probably debating whether to opt. That's opt? What's the blue card?
That's the
That's
gifts
the
ungiven.
gifts. Okay. Then I'm not sure what we're thinking, because you're unless he thinks his opponent is tapped out and he can just go for the gusto right now.
He wants to Manamorphose.
He wants to Manamorphose, get to his blue, cast his gifts ungiven, and see if he can just go now.
Well, he could ritual, and that is 2 rituals. So he could ritual, Morphose, gifts, and still have mana up.
And still have 1 mana up. He could even leave up a blue source if he wanted to. But I think he's just short of what he really wants to be doing. And that's probably the math he's doing right now. All right, he is passed.
He passed the turn.
Blue-white player drew another land. I see he's also got Snapcaster Mage in hand.
Everything's coming up. Everything's coming up blue-white control right now.
Yep. And he just passes back, as he should. And Chester drew... It's red. Is that another ritual on the far left there?
It might be.
Now the real question is, what did your blue-white opponent draw? Does he have counter magic? Like that's kind of the thought as you're going through the storm process right now. So there's the Manamorphose. All right.
And here's the thinking man's game, right? We're going to Snapcaster for Spell Snare here?
I think on the Manamorphose, not necessarily, because that's a break-even spell. The card draw is relevant, but Chester has missed his last 2 land drops. Typically, when playing against Storm, I'm more familiar with Storm in Legacy than I am in Modern, but typically you let them resolve like 1 ritual, a card effect that gains them mana, and then you counter the next one. And especially in Modern, since all of your rituals, your rituals you're typically playing cost 2, I think that's where your counter spell comes in. So I think he lets this Manamorphose resolve. Then I think he Spell Snares the next ritual that comes down, and then Chester's down 2 cards to your 1 as a control player, and he probably is forced to pass the turn. So Morphose resolves. We've got our mana on table for us. Oh, Morphose again. Okay. Tapping the mana into it. So
That's
So I think this is a break-even spell, and so I think you let this one resolve too.
And he paid the life off the Shivan Reef there.
Okay. All right. I see mana moving up. I think Chester's still debating. He's trying to figure out what his opponent's on, which counterspell he's got, how many.
He found his second gifts.
I mean, you could run out the gifts here, but I feel like that's a waste of your mana. Oh,
And it looks like that's what he's going to do. Just
All
try to
right.
gifts here. Which is going to resolve.
which is going to resolve.
Oh, no, he did have the second
I had
cryptic.
a Septum Cryptic. Okay. But yeah, I mean, that's an easy counterspell for the control player. Now, having drawn the second gifts, he can just get, he's got that opportunity to gifts again next turn.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, thinking about this as I was mentioning, Chester's missed 2 land drops now. That's probably what Chester was looking for off those Manamorphoses first, is looking for those land drops. Because that's another way you can kind of somewhat beat your control matchup is to try and make your land drops. So you're not quite as reliant on those rituals resolving. But
And Teferi Time Raveler is kind of proving to be a bit of a fulcrum or a wedge here in this matchup because he can't power through. The Storm player can't power through his spells in response to a Snapcaster or anything else.
So
He's going to adjust.
I mean, he has to. Teferi forces him to main phase this. With 1 mana open, I expect this to be countered as well. He has 6 mana. He can just snap Cryptic.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm expecting here. Tapping appropriately, making sure he uses his exactly 4 blue appropriately.
Correct.
There's the Snapcaster, and there's the Cryptic command. And again, and he's going to pick up the Snapcaster Mage, so he can do it again next turn.
Yeah, he's got enough cards on deck because he had his Teferi Hero of Dominaria in his hand too that I saw. So he should be in a good place from here to grind out the win beyond this.
I mean, I think that's where you get to. I mean, that's kind of similar to the Kolaghan's command, your Snapcaster play sequencing that you see.
And he's going to pay the 1 life off the Fire
Oh, yeah,
Islet.
Yep. That is a painful mana base he drew this game because he didn't have that Steam Vents early, right? He was on Shivan Reef early.
No, he played the Steam Vents first.
But lots of spells that require specific colors. Your colorless is not as used in this matchup or in this deck. Did we see what Kenwon drew?
We did not.
Okay.
He picked up and put down his hand pretty quickly there.
Okay.
He's got a Field of Ruin.
The Colonnade makes
It's
sense.
a Force of Negation.
Okay.
The Condemn is still active. And he's got the Teferi.
Yeah, I mean, the Condemn is dead in this matchup, but...
Sleight of hand for Chester.
Yeah.
I'll let that resolve. He's keeping track of his storm count on 1.
Yep. Good play, because at this point, you're... As a Storm player, you're in a bad spot.
Yeah. You've been bullied and pushed into the locker at this point in time, and it's really a hard place to kind of power out of when Teferi Hero of Dominaria... I'm sorry, Teferi Time Raveler
Time
comes
Raveler,
down.
yeah.
Oh, he found himself a Baral. That's a good pickup.
It's a good pickup.
There's not an immediate response. Again, the Teferi is a board tax.
Although, if I remember right from earlier, he had another Spell Snare in his hand. Didn't Kenwon have another Spell Snare?
No, he's played both of them, if you look.
Yep. Okay. All right. Baral is good.
Yeah, he's holding the Snapcaster for something he actually cares about.
Yeah, which, I mean, realistically, looking at Chester's hands, he's got 2 rituals and not a whole lot else going on, so...
I'm not sure what he's hoping to do here, but he did pay the life.
Well, he does have 2 Fiery Islets. Maybe he's hoping to just generate a bunch of mana and crack the 2 lands to get in there.
That actually isn't a bad idea.
No.
It's a desperation move.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in a good spot at this point anyway. And realistically, if things fail here, time limits are a thing. Sometimes it's just better to accept you're done, scoop up, and go to game 2.
Chester looks like he's talking about, oh, he's got Past in Flames. That's what he did.
Okay.
That's going to bring out the Cryptic.
Oh, yeah.
No, he'll pay the full 3 for, oh, I like this. Paying 3 mana for the Force of Negation. That will counter and exile, so there's no buyback next turn for Chester to flash it back. I really like that.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, no, takes away more hope for the comeback. As if Kenwon wasn't already in the driver's seat, he is he's even more so in the driver's seat here.
Chester's going to crack one of the Fiery Islets, pay another life.
That's one play I would actually. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Here's the Field of Ruin on the other islet.
Yep.
To shut off the value.
Yeah. Giving your opponent a basic is far superior to letting them draw any card.
Yeah.
So now, realistically, all Kenwon needs to do, now he just needs to find a win con. That's where he's at. He has all of the answers he could want. He's got his Snapcaster Mage in hand, which Chester even knows about. But you can't turn up field with those Celestial Colonnades yet because you need all your mana open. So, let's see here. What do we have for a win con in our list? Looking through... I mean, getting Jace. Jace is what you want to draw here. Because you would tap your 4 mana, get your Jace down. You don't brainstorm. You don't do anything else. You just... Jace is a win con, pure and simple, just plus Jace. I think one of the biggest fallacies I see whenever I play against an opponent with who has a Jace down against me is the tendency to brainstorm too often.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. The brainstorm effect is a very powerful magic effect, whether it be the original brainstorm proper or from Jace. But I think because of that power, people kind of get those blinders on where it's like, I get Jace, I'm going to brainstorm. And right now, all Kenwon wants to do, you just draw Jace and you just plus him. You ignore all the rest of his text, you plus him, and in a few turns you win the game. That's what Kenwon wants to do here to close out this game.
Do we think that we have a different line with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria? He's already with the Field of Ruin in his hand, he's at 8 mana. So he's broken that Teferi window where you have Snapcaster plus now.
Yes.
He plays the Field of Ruin in his hand. He gets to 8 mana. He plays Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, plussing, drawing a card, untapping 2 additional lands, and he's up 5. So he has Snapcaster with Spell Snare, Snapcaster with Force of Negation, Snapcaster with Opt, and from there I think he can bully the game, pretty much force it closed from here.
Yeah, that's true.
Now we're teaming up Teferis. We've created a time paradox.
Well, I mean, that's kind of Teferi's thing. So
we're gonna untap an island and a glacial fortress rather than the Field of Ruin.
I'm fine with that. Like, you want your blue sources. It gives you options.
Sure.
Or at least gives you the illusion of options.
Sure.
Kind of looking at his hand. Like, I see a Narset going through. I see a Supreme. Like, he's got all his creature removal. His, these dead cards from game 1. I think I saw... Oh, no, it's still the Condemn. Oh, no, he's got a Condemn and a Path. If he actually cared about Baral, he could answer it.
Correct.
But Baral doesn't do anything.
At this stage of the game, Chester's just hoping to create a mass of spells that he can possibly power through.
Yeah, and with his 1 card in hand, there's very little he can do. I think did I miss it? He just played a land, too.
He did. He played the mountain.
Yeah. The land drops he wanted earlier, now he's getting. Like, I would... If I was playing as Chester right now... I would concede and go to game 2. Like, there's...
Speaking of game 2, looking over the sideboards here.
Sure.
What fundamentally changes in your posture as a Storm player against these control lists? Because Force of Negation happens to be a really back-breaking piece of this current metagame. You've seen Storm fall off real far in the last few months since Force of Negation was printed, since Teferi Time Raveler was printed. How do we even battle our way out of this?
So I think you've got to go with like your alternate outs. So he's got 2 Pyromancer's Ascension in his board. I think you bring those in as alternate ways. Did he have Lightning Bolt in his main?
He does not.
He does not. Okay, so you can't do like the old school like just double up my Lightning Bolts plan, but you still bring in the Ascension. It doubles up your spells. You bring in the Empty the Warrens, and then he's got a Flusterstorm in his board to try and fight the control the counter spells. But again, like having played this matchup, you don't typically bring in Flusterstorm against Storm because like you don't if they get to Grape Shot, they've already beat you.
Right.
Typically, what you actually want to do is you want to kind of restrict their mana. You're countering the rituals. And just making them waste cards.
Of course.
You're not in black. You don't have discard spells of your own. But every time you can make them spend a card and not win the game, you're winning. So.
And blue-white is still doing blue-white things.
Yep.
While we're talking, but looking forward to game 2. The matchup I think gets more favorable for the blue-white control list from here.
Yeah, looking at his sideboard, he's got 2 Rest in Peace to shut down the Past in Flames. He's got Ashiok to shut down Gifts Ungiven.
Dovin's Veto.
He's got Dovin's Veto, which is just a hard counter against everything he's doing. And then Damping Sphere. Am I remembering that card right? That's the artifact that when they play more spells makes their spells cost more.
Correct. And lands tap for what they're worth, not more. So
right, which that one's more relevant against Tron, but
correct.
Yeah, for the Storm, like the Storm match here, the making your rituals feel real bad. I mean, Chester could still get out of it, but he has to be on the Empty the Warrens plan.
Yeah.
In game 2.
Game 2 also creates a possibility. Do you think we're bringing in something like Monastery Mentor, or we're fine with our Planeswalker Blood Moons in this matchup?
I think we're fine with Planeswalker Blood Moon. I think, yeah, we don't feel the need to win on a different axis because Storm's not pressuring our win cons.
And that's going to bring out the Condemned. Yep. Chester's attacking.
I mean, Chester's already given up at this point. Like the attack,
It's understandable. I'm exasperated with Chester.
I mean, I understand. You play Magic. You want to play Magic. That's fine.
I'm in the same sunken place. This always feels bad when you're the one doing all of the what feels like the
and he has entered his scoop phase.
There's the scoop. So there's our game 1 going to our blue-white control player. We've got blue-white control against Storm sideboarding. We'll take a look at that real quick.
Yeah. I mean, so as the blue-white player, it's actually less about what you're bringing in and more about the dead cards you're bringing out.
Sure.
You're probably your spot removal. You definitely bring out those condemns. I guess he's only got the 1 condemn. Just got unlucky there. You're not bringing out your sweeper. Like he has 2 Supreme Verdicts. You're probably leaving those in. Because you expect your opponent to be on Empty the Warrens.
Sure.
Path to Exile, you're not cutting all of those because you do kind of want to look at Baral. The Shadow of Doubt, real cute, real spicy. Can really just hose a Gifts Ungiven.
That plus an Ashiok, we think that now usually with the Storm matchup, we're boarding out things like we need to make room for pieces of the puzzle here so that you just have spell volume,
basically.
So we'd take out the Gifts Ungivens in those cases usually.
Yeah, because you're more looking for volume. You also expect your opponent to kind of have answer. Your control, like you're a 4-cost card that if they have how many Teferis is he playing? I guess Chester won't know this. Yeah,
enough.
Like when you have to cast your 4-cost card as a sorcery instead of an instant, it is a much worse card.
Yeah. So we'll go back to see how we're doing here as we're getting shuffled up.
Yeah, they're still staring at the sideboard.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see. Some of our players, like Chester, we did a little bit of an interview with some of the folks. We had them fill out some questions on the back. It was optional for our players, but Chester happens to be relatively new to the game. I've played since high school, which was, I think, 1876 when I was in high school. So Chester has only been playing for about 2 or 3 years. He plays in the stories, a regular installment here at D6.
He hasn't played a lot of. He's been playing for a little bit, but he hasn't played a lot of competitive Magic. So it's really cool to see him sleeve up something powerful like Storm. I think it's a good choice for a tournament.
Right, and we're really excited to have here at D6 and have people come out, whether they're more casual players or they're serious players. This is something that we're trying to sort of be excited about.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that the store is helping support. I mean, this is D6 Games' very first foray into something the size of a 1K. We've had a pretty good turnout today. I didn't catch how many players we had in our event today.
I think it's north of 40. We were aiming for. We had at least 100 that were interested. for the Facebook event,
Oh,
which
okay.
is what
Yep.
it is.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't use Facebook. So
I know we had a cap set for 127 just because one, space issues, two, that 128th person adds an extra round to the day. So it was like a nice number for multiple reasons.
sure.
How
How many rounds do we have today, by the way?
So if we have north of 40,
Mark says 6.
Mark says 6. Okay.
6 rounds of Magic, and then a cut to top 8.
And then a cut to top 8.
Outstanding.
Yep. So I know, having talked with some of the TO at D6 Games here, I know he was kind of hoping for like that 40 to 50 to be able to say, hey, we did this. This is a good result. We're going to be able to do this again. So I feel like we're going to be able to do another one of these in the future.
Excellent.
The thing with getting one of these to work is you need to pick the right weekend. In the Midwest, and especially being an hour away from the Twin Cities area, that can be harder because there are lots of stores in the cities running events. To get people to come down from the cities, you got to pick a weekend where there's accidentally nothing going on, no local Grand Prix, and Midwest players, they travel very well. Like they will go to wherever. We will drive 8 hours to Kansas City. We will drive 12 hours to Oklahoma City.
That's very true.
I once on a weekend drove from Rochester, Minnesota. I drove to Des Moines. Then we drove back to Minnesota to change our decks, and then drove on Sunday, the next day, to Madison, Wisconsin for PPTQ in both those locations that weekend.
Long haul trucker magic.
Long haul trucker magic right there. And we weren't the only ones. Now, obviously, different people, different places, but like we definitely saw a lot of familiar faces from day one in Des Moines that were also in day 2 in Madison.
Sure.
But that's just what we do. We're in the Midwest. We expect to have to travel hours to get to our large-scale events. So to have something local like this is actually, it's really fun. It's really cool. And we were excited when D6 decided to try and put this on. So hoping to do it again in the future, and I think we will, based on the turnout we had today.
Excellent.
I think the other thing that helps us is next weekend is, of course, the Star City Regionals. And I think there's a lot of people that want to test, hey, what am I playing in this event? And this is the perfect kind of play test event for that.
Excellent.
With good prizes, too. So,
Mark, we have anyone in the chat?
Got 7 people watching at the moment.
all right.
Well, shout out to the folks in the chat. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Snuggle up with a cup of cocoa and a blanket and
Yeah,
watch
especially-
some Modern.
Especially since it got cold out for anybody local. So,
Good morning,
All
Zach
right.
Coffee.
shout out to one of our locals who said hi to us.
That's
All
right.
right. So I think
Looks like we're just about ready to shuffle up here.
yeah, I think we're shuffling up. Sideboarding's done. Choices have been made for better or for worse.
Another thing I'm looking for is some of the sideboarding decisions from Chester. This is a learning opportunity. In his own telling, he said he would look forward to learning this deck as he goes along today, because he's played Storm before. He's maybe not quite a newer player, but is sort of new to these situations. I'll be curious to see the decisions he made in sideboarding and see if that actually pays off and gives him some sort of success here.
I mean, we can admit it's kind of hard mode right now because this is not the matchup you want with Storm. Like
this is the least favorable matchup for the deck right now, and they managed over the last 6 months Wizards of the Coast with the cards they've printed in Modern Horizons, Thrones of Eldraine, War of the Spark. They've somehow managed to make that matchup even less favorable for him.
well, and part of that is just the tools and the new cards that they've given to blue-white control.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, there are definitely some Modern sometimes kind of can feel like a rock paper scissors format where it's like, well, my matchup's great here but terrible here, and that's just kind of where we're at, you know. Chester is the rock. Unfortunately, Kenwon has the paper, and it just stops a lot of what he's doing. Now, it's not a 0% win percentage, even post board. Like he has hands where he can do well, and Kenwon has hands that won't interact quite as nicely. I think the game 1 was a better percentage for Chester, which he unfortunately lost, but we'll see what game 2 has. All right, what is this open? Oh,
Play draw matters a little bit here too, right?
Play draw matters a little bit.
He's got 1 land in hand, no lands.
No, I think that's
That's a Shivan Reef.
That's okay.
Oh, no, he's going to ship it.
Yeah, I think he has to there.
Okay. Kenwon chose to keep his 7. There was something else I was thinking of. Oh, you know what I thought was really interesting was Kenwon conspicuously not playing Stoneforge Mystic.
There is no Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge Mystic kind of it takes you on a different angle. It also takes up, I mean, it takes up typically 6 slots in your deck. And blue-white control doesn't really need it. You have other ways to win the game. If I wanted, looking at his list, so he's on 2 Jaces, 1 Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. He's got the 2 Narsets. They're not really win conditions. Like those are his 3 win conditions. If you wanted more win conditions, I would just go with more of those cards. He does have the Mentors in the board, which I like Mentor a lot. Main deck or sideboard.
I was gonna say I've seen some of those in the side or in the main deck on these blue-white control lists. Now that's something to keep in mind today. That's the reason I brought up the Stoneforge Mystic was that it seemed like initially they were trying to plug Stoneforge Mystic into Dredge and Jund and Affinity and basically every deck just to see where it still fit. And it looks like the dust is starting to finally settle on that card in the format, kind of fitting into what feels a bit more like I guess we'd call it a tempo deck.
Yeah. Just thinking to Legacy, like it's more. If you look at like the Stoneblade decks in Legacy, like sure they have Force of Will because they're in blue, but they're not they're not the hard control decks like Miracles is, and
Sure.
I think more of those like it feels more mid rangey than anything else.
Okay.
In those Stoneforge decks, sure, or maybe a little combo or not combo. What I mean is mixed decks, like like an aggro control deck or mid range control deck.
That looks like a repeal all the way at the end of Chester's hand. He's shipping this back one more time.
Yep.
Play draw here. That's going to make it a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. The thing with Storm and Modern, because compared to Storm and Legacy, in Storm and Legacy, like you can just try and keep that 5-card hand, hope your opponent doesn't have Force of Will, and just go for it on turn 1.
Ad nauseum is a heck of a drug.
Ad nauseum is a heck of a drug. But in Modern, like you need your card advantage. Well, your card selection pieces. I can't call it advantage because they just cycle. But you need your card selection pieces on those like first 2 turns while you're making land drops.
Yep.
And realistically, Chester's out here as he probably needs a Baral to actually stick on turn 2, so that he can turn 3 as gifts, and turn 4 win the game
On volume.
on volume.
Sure.
Otherwise, he's just not going to have enough cards. And all of that's dependent on his opponent doing nothing to interact with him. And spoilers, Kenwon is going to do things that interact with him.
Now, if he brought in, and I'll be curious to see if Chester actually brought in the pieces of the puzzle.
Oh, there's the Empty the Warrens in his hand.
Empty the Warrens.
But he's
see
still...
gifts ungiven.
Does he have any lands in that hand? Oh, he's got.
He does.
He does have 2. Okay, so it's at least playable. Which...
So he's got 2 cards to ship away in this case.
Yeah, this would be a beautiful hand on 7.
Yes.
So, knowing that I probably have to win with Empty the Warrens, I would keep the Empty the Warrens and actually ship the gifts.
Yep.
And probably have to ship the Manamorphose.
Looks like he's privileging.
No, I think he just shipped the
Morphos and the Empty the Warrens.
Yeah, I think I would have kept the Empty the Warrens, and like I would have no problem just being like turn 2, run out some rituals, empty the Warrens, just try and attack you twice for the win. It requires you to have your Supreme Verdicts, if you even left them in,
right,
to beat me. So I'm curious to see how Chester does, sticking with kind of the base plan of the deck as opposed to going the alternate route.
We see a Goblin Electromancer and is that a remand or repeal?
You have his list.
That's a remand on top for Chester.
Okay.
Scalding Tarn for Kenwon.
Yeah,
into his second land drop. He left both cards on top, which I guess, get behind.
I think Chester's now debating whether he runs out the...
He's going to shock that in.
Yep.
He's going to play the Electromancer here, which I think...
Does he have the Spell Snare?
Going to... Yeah. So he'll fetch here. Is this going to be a... This is going to be a shock, too.
So that's... Well, that could be a couple things. If he left in... He probably left in some number of paths. He probably left in the Spell Snares, because there's a lot of 2s in Storm. And And there's the Spell Snare. Okay. I mean, on Chester's side, you still want that out of his hand, but I think you really wanted your guy there.
Yeah, you really wanted that to resolve.
I see Timely. I think he left in his Timely reinforcements, which I think I find that interesting, just kind of as maybe as the backup plan. If your opponent gets on the Empty the Warrens, you can at least get some tokens down.
So we'll sleight of hand here for Chester. Take a look at the top two. That's a Brawl Chief of Compliance, which he thinks he wants. He's going to put that on the bottom, send the land away. I think he tries to power out the Brawl here.
Yeah. Again, you really want your
Gifts to cost 3.
You really want
especially
your gifts
since
to
the
cost
other
3.
card you bottomed with Slight was a land.
Yep.
He put that Shivan Wreath on the bottom.
Oh,
he passed the turn.
passes.
That's interesting. And Tran leaves that land uncracked.
He's got his land drop and then passes right back. Traditional
now we've got
blue-white control
Snapcaster.
magic. Now we've got
Spell Snare.
Yep. Ironically, in that situation, Chester should have went for it.
Yeah.
But that's part of learning the deck too.
Yep.
So.
And these situations are really all credit to Chester for trying to navigate that the way that he did. Maybe he was hoping he'd hit the land off the top so that he had the 4th land for a remand there.
Yeah. Being that it was sleight of hand, like he has to get rid of one of those cards. Like that's, I mean, that it just makes your choices hard.
Right.
So we already predicted this. Yep. Snapcaster, Spell Snare, and
Brave and valiant fight. Blue-white controls doing things on your turn. This feels like it was their turn.
Yep.
I agree, Chester. This
Yep.
feels a little unfair. Moving to beat down.
Yep.
Chester
This
takes 2.
This is the super secret win con of blue-white controls. We'll just get you a Snapcaster beats, right?
Yep.
So we got Field of Ruin. I mean, that's basically just the 4th land for your Cryptic. Did he have a Cryptic? I thought I saw a Cryptic earlier.
He does have a Cryptic command here.
Yeah. Let's see. Chester's on.
He's
Gifts,
stuck on
Ritual,
3
Ritual.
lands.
Yeah.
Yep. He's stuck on 3 lands. Here comes the Ritual.
Yep.
No, the Manamorphose first.
I'm looking to draw that land because if he draws the land,
If you were to ask me, I would honestly Cryptic this, but you didn't ask me. I'd probably either Cryptic and bounce my own Snapcaster here, or bounce Chester's
yeah,
land.
it looks like he's letting it resolve, which I think either play is really fine. I think again you're hoping to get him to burn extra cards.
Sure.
Did he draw Pyromancer's Ascension? Is that what I saw?
He did.
Yeah.
That's going to eat a Cryptic command.
Oh yes, it will.
Squish.
And actually, you know what I would also do to him here? Seeing that he's stuck on 3 lands, I don't even mind if he were to go Cryptic, bounce the Steam Vents.
Right.
Force him to have to shock that back in again. That's, again, the super secret win condition is just
Life total race.
life total.
He's looking over that graveyard.
Actually, I won't say there's no wrong choices on that Cryptic command, but there's very few wrong choices currently on that Cryptic
He's
command.
actually, it looks like Kenwon's debating letting that resolve because of Teferi Time Raveler. He
Ooh.
examined the graveyard.
Yeah.
He might fix his mana a bit more with a Field of Ruin. He's debating whether this is the thing he actually wants to Cryptic, which I can't disagree with.
I mean, having Cryptic in hand, like, if it gets out of hand, he can always bounce it later to reset it, which I don't know if I like that.
I appreciate the patience from Kenwon here, thinking through his options.
And there's the Field of Ruin. Okay. So there's kind of what you were thinking.
Yep.
Fix the mana. Also making sure to hit the Fiery Islet to avoid the free card draw later.
Right.
And getting himself a basic white source. Not that, I guess, his opponent's been, like, not that necessarily you need the basic in this matchup, but
Right.
never hurts.
I don't know if Chester tapped that for mana beforehand and flipped it or floated a mana on deck or not. So we'll have to find out.
We will.
He doesn't have any other permanents to run out here, so he's going to let him keep the...
Yeah, so I mean, the only reason he would do that is if he was going to ritual out, but I don't believe he had another Manamorphose in hand.
Right.
So
I like this line from Tran. This is a poised and patient play. It gives Chester, if he's paying attention to the information that he just showed him, it gives him all the information that he in fact does have a Teferi, and he's not actually worried about this thing going crazy, the Pyromancer's Ascension going crazy on him, because he's focused on that beatdown plan to Chester's life total.
But he did just miss the land. There's the Teferi.
It's okay. Teferi's going to draw. Oh, it's the Ashiok.
Oh,
I like that too. The Ashiok off the top rope's going to activate, put cards into his yard, and then exile the graveyard.
As if Chester wasn't already in a bad place.
Yeah. Boys and girls.
Because now that gifts that he's been holding on to, just dead. It is a 4-mana do nothing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and this matchup, as we said, was so tilted towards blue-white in the first place, and especially Kenwon specific for the way he put his list together. This is built to beat stuff like this. I'm impressed, Kenwon.
Yeah. And now you really wish you had that Empty the Warrens.
That's right.
Yep. We'll go back to the mulligan. Like, that's... and sometimes, games... I mean, again, coming from Eternal formats, like Legacy is my favorite. It's not quite Vintage, where games are won and lost in the mulligan, but games can be won and lost in the mulligan.
Right.
So there's the Manamorphose. Again, just looking to draw cards at this point.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers to Storm. It has been a hard 6 months for the Storm strategies and the critical mass spell decks overall. Individual card power from a lot of the decks right now, or different kinds of critical mass like Paradoxical Outcome, have really pushed Storm to sort of the back of the the format.
Maybe not tier 2 because Storm is always Storm, but definitely more like tier 1.5.
Right. There's a sleight of hand.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm looking for here
is a land.
Is one, a land. Two, like, actually what I really need right now is I need a Grape Shot, because I need to get Ashiok off the board. If I can just, like, hard find a Grape Shot and remove Ashiok, then my Gifts is live again, then I get to play Magic. Because my opponent's win con is currently at 2 points per turn. I can survive through that. You can just, ironically, as much as you want to do things right now, you just need to be patient.
Right.
So, again, we're not sure exactly what Chester is looking for, but that's if I was in this situation, that's what I'd be looking for. You want the Grape Shot.
Right.
You kill the Snapcaster, you knock out Ashiok. Neither of the scry cards are red. It's a Baral, and I can't see the other one.
I think it's a Steam Vents. No, it wasn't a Steam
I don't think it
Vents.
was a land.
Yeah.
He definitely 1-1. Baral to the bottom, if I saw correctly.
Passes the turn back to Kenwon.
Yeah. And Kenwon is in the position he wants to be in as blue-white control. He's going to draw. He will hopefully play a land, and then he'll swing. Because
it looks like a Field of Ruin.
Yeah. And realistically, that Field of Ruin is just going to keep him off of relevant lands.
Right. Activating there on the Steam Vents.
I don't mind that either.
No.
Forcing your opponent to have less options on their mana base.
Right.
And also thinning your own deck. Yes,
Right.
you need your land drops as blade control, but he's up to 6 mana. Like, that's kind of where you want to get to be comfortable. Now all you have to do is draw answers.
Correct.
And that Ashiok, Chester didn't really do enough last turn to make me worry about either Pyromancer's Ascension or Past in Flames next turn, because there's no rituals in his yard. I think you just sit with him on 4.
That makes sense.
Because you just want to keep Gifts Ungiven from resolving. Well, doesn't actually counter Gifts. You just want to keep Gifts Ungiven from having a usable effect.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that appears to be a fail to find.
From Chester? If he's down to 2 lands, then yes, that is a fail to find. Really?
Ashiok might have taken
Oh, it's Ashiok. He can't search. He still shuffles. He can't search. Field of Ruin.
Yes.
Turns
That's-
out it's Wasteland.
that's
And you
brutal.
still get to go get something.
That's brutal. And there's the Teferi and the draw.
Yup.
And he knows he's got the lock from here.
Yeah.
So he'll activate. He'll plus targeting Chester, exiling the yard. It's all over but the crying from here, friends.
Yeah.
It's a hard life out there for Storm right now.
Plays
There's
the
the Baral.
Baral.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's, and I think Chester's kind of, yep, there's the handshake.
All right, there's the handshake, ladies and gentlemen. That was really well played.
Yeah. And yeah, like I remember, like I'm going back to the mulligan again because that definitely made or broke that game. If you keep Oh,
we don't have anything on the feed here at all. I've got your desktop right now. There it is.
All right. So did double check. We've got about 30 seconds left in the round. Our backup match has finished. So while they're filling out that, we'll probably take a short break since I don't think it'll be too long here.
That works for
And
me.
then we will come back for round 2. Once again, thank you very much for joining our stream. We should be back in, we'll say, 5-10 minutes, somewhere in there.
It works for me.
All right.